The grand ballroom sparkled with elegance that evening, a scene straight out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting shimmering reflections on polished marble floors. The air buzzed with excitement as the city's wealthiest and most influential people mingled under the soft glow of golden lights. Waiters in crisp uniforms moved gracefully through the crowd, offering trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. It was the kind of event where everyone dressed to impress. Designer gowns, tailored suits, and expensive jewelry were everywhere you looked. Amidst all this glamour, one woman stood out. Not because she was dazzling like the others, but because she wasn't. Clara Bennett entered the room quietly, her modest floral dress looking almost out of place among the sea of sequins and silk. Her hair was pulled back simply, and she wore no flashy accessories, just a delicate silver bracelet on her wrist. Clara didn't belong to this world of luxury. She knew it, and so did everyone else. Clara hadn't planned to attend the auction, at all. In fact, she'd tried to decline when her friend Sophia insisted she come along. "You never do anything fun," Sophia had teased over lunch earlier that week. "This is a charity event. It's not about showing off. Besides, I already RSVP'd for both of us." Reluctantly, Clara agreed, though deep down she felt certain she wouldn't fit in. She didn't have the right clothes, the right connections, or even the confidence to walk into a room full of strangers who seemed so effortlessly perfect. As soon as Clara stepped inside, the whispers began. People turned their heads, not to admire her but to size her up and quickly dismiss her. One man nudged his companion and raised an eyebrow. A group of women nearby exchanged amused glances before bursting into quiet giggles. Someone muttered loud enough for her to hear, "Who invited her?" The comments stung, but Clara chose to ignore them. She reminded herself why she was there, to support a good cause, not to win anyone's approval. Sophia noticed the tension immediately. Wrapping an arm around Clara's shoulders, she leaned in and whispered, "Don't pay attention to them. They're just jealous they don't look half as lovely as you do tonight." Clara managed a small smile, grateful for her friend's kindness. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. Every step she took felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of everyone's judgment was pressing down on her. What the crowd didn't know was that Clara wasn't alone in this. Her husband, Adrian Bennett, was supposed to be there with her, but he wasn't. Adrian was a billionaire entrepreneur whose name carried immense power in business circles. He owned a global tech company that had revolutionized industries, earning him fame and fortune beyond what most could imagine. Yet despite his success, Adrian preferred to stay out of the limelight whenever possible. That night, however, work obligations had kept him tied up overseas, leaving Clara to represent their family at the auction. Adrian had made sure Clara received the invitation personally, wanting her to experience something new. He trusted her, completely, knowing she handled every situation with grace and integrity. But he also understood how intimidating such events could be for someone like Clara, who valued simplicity over extravagance. Before leaving for his trip, Adrian had encouraged her gently. "You'll be fine," he'd said. "Just remember, you're stronger than you think, and if anyone gives you trouble, remind them whose wife you are." Unfortunately, Clara didn't feel particularly strong as she navigated the crowded room. Everywhere she went, she sensed eyes following her, judging her choices, questioning her presence. Some people were more subtle about their disdain, while others made no effort to hide their amusement. At one point, a well-dressed couple approached her, pretending to be friendly. "So how do you know the organizers?" the woman asked sweetly, though her tone suggested she already assumed the worst. Clara hesitated, unsure how to respond without sounding defensive. Before she could answer, Sophia intervened, steering her away from the awkward encounter. Despite the discomfort, Clara refused to let the negativity get to her. She reminded herself that appearances didn't define a person's worth. She thought about Adrian, who had built his empire from scratch, proving that hard work and determination mattered far more than fancy clothes or flashy cars. If he could rise above doubters and critics, then surely she could handle one evening surrounded by shallow judgments. As the auction preparations got underway, Clara found herself seated near the front of the room. Though she still felt out of place she resolved to focus on the purpose of the event, raising money for charity. Each item up for bid represented an opportunity to make a difference in someone's life, and that was something Clara genuinely cared about. For the first time since arriving, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could find her own way to contribute and prove to herself that she belonged after all. Little did Clara know, the night was about to take a dramatic turn. One that would leave the entire room speechless and force them to rethink everything they thought they knew about her. The auction began with an air of excitement that filled the room. The auctioneer, a charismatic man with a booming voice, stood confidently at the podium, welcoming everyone and thanking them for their generosity. As he introduced the first item, a rare painting by a renowned artist, the energy in the room shifted. People leaned forward in their seats, paddles ready, eager to outbid one another. Each successful sale brought cheers and applause, fueling the competitive spirit among the wealthy attendees. Clara watched quietly from her seat, feeling both fascinated and overwhelmed by the spectacle unfolding before her. She had never been to an auction like this, where money seemed almost secondary to the thrill of winning. For most of the evening, she stayed silent, content to observe rather than participate. But as the event progressed, something inside her stirred, a quiet determination to join in even if only for a moment. When lot number 14 came up for bidding, Clara felt her heart skip a beat. It was a breathtaking diamond necklace, its stones glittering under the spotlight as it was displayed on a velvet cushion. The auctioneer described it as a masterpiece of craftsmanship, valued at over $500,000. Gasps rippled through the audience as people craned their necks to get a better look. Clara couldn't help but admire its beauty, though she knew such luxury wasn't part of her everyday life. As the bidding started, paddles shot up around the room. Wealthy bidders called out numbers confidently, each trying to outdo the other. Clara sat back, watching the frenzy unfold. But then, without fully understanding why, she found herself raising her paddle tentatively. Her bid was modest compared to the soaring amounts being thrown around, but it caught the auctioneer's attention nonetheless. "We have a new bidder here," he announced cheerfully, pointing toward Clara. For a brief moment, the room fell silent. Heads turned in unison, eyes locking onto Clara. Some looked confused, others amused, and a few downright incredulous. A low murmur spread through the crowd, punctuated by scattered laughter. One man sitting nearby leaned over to his date and whispered loudly enough for Clara to hear, "What's she doing? Does she even know what this thing costs?" His comment elicited chuckles from those within earshot, making Clara's cheeks burn. Among the bidders was Marcus Langley, a well-known figure in high society known for his arrogance and love of showing off. Marcus prided himself on dominating auctions, often driving prices sky-high just to prove he could afford anything he wanted. When he saw Clara's paddle go up, his lips curled into a smug grin. He raised his own paddle immediately, doubling her initial bid. "Let's see how long that lasts," he muttered under his breath, clearly enjoying the entertainment Clara's presence provided. But Clara didn't back down. Something about the way Marcus smirked, and the dismissive laughter echoing around her ignited a spark of defiance. She raised her paddle again, matching his increased bid. The auctioneer acknowledged her with a nod, his tone neutral but professional. "We're still climbing, ladies and gentlemen," he declared, keeping the momentum alive. Marcus frowned, clearly irritated that someone so ordinary would dare challenge him. He countered with another bid, his voice sharp and deliberate. "Surely we can do better than this," he said, his words dripping with sarcasm as he glanced pointedly at Clara. His remark drew more titters from the crowd, but Clara remained unfazed. Instead of shrinking away, she surprised herself by raising her paddle once more. With each successive bid, the tension in the room grew palpable. Other bidders dropped out, realizing the competition between Clara and Marcus had taken center stage. Some watched in awe, while others exchanged skeptical glances. One woman near the front stage whispered to her companion, "Who is she? Why? Is she even bothering?" Despite the growing pressure, Clara refused to give in. Every time Marcus tried to intimidate her with a higher bid or a snide remark, she responded calmly, raising her paddle with quiet resolve. Inside, her nerves were fraying, but outwardly she appeared composed. She reminded herself of Adrian's words, "Never let anyone underestimate you." Those words became her anchor, grounding her as the stakes climbed higher and higher. Finally, after several rounds of intense back-and-forth bidding, Clara made a bold move. Summoning every ounce of courage, she placed a bid so high that the entire room gasped audibly. Even Marcus blinked in disbelief, momentarily speechless. The number hung in the air, heavy with shock and anticipation. Clara's hands trembled slightly as she lowered her paddle, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea if she could actually afford the amount she'd just offered, but in that moment, all that mattered was standing her ground. The auctioneer paused dramatically, scanning the room before announcing, "Going once." The silence was deafening. All eyes were on Marcus now, waiting to see if he would counter. For the first time that evening, his confident demeanor faltered. He hesitated, clearly weighing his options. The price had far exceeded the necklace's value, and continuing the battle risked looking petty, or worse, foolish. Just as the auctioneer prepared to say, "Going twice," a deep, commanding voice cut through the tension. "I'll cover my wife's bid," Adrian Bennett declared, striding purposefully into the ballroom. Dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, Adrian exuded authority and poise. His entrance sent ripples of recognition through the crowd. Heads whipped around, jaws dropped, and whispers erupted. Everyone knew who Adrian was, the billionaire tech mogul whose name commanded respect worldwide. Adrian walked directly to Clara, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Turning to face the stunned audience, he addressed them coolly. "It seems some of you underestimated my wife tonight," he said, his tone polite yet firm. "Let me assure you, Clara is more than capable of handling herself. But since I'm here now, allow me to take care of this." With a nod to the auctioneer, Adrian confirmed the winning bid, securing the necklace. The room erupted into murmurs, a mix of admiration and embarrassment swirling among the guests. Clara sat perfectly still, her mind racing with emotions. Relief washed over her, followed by pride, not because Adrian had stepped in, but because she had held her own until the very end. And as Adrian took his seat beside her, squeezing her hand gently, she realized something profound. Sometimes standing up for yourself isn't about proving your worth to others, it's about believing in it yourself. The room buzzed with a mix of astonishment and disbelief as Adrian Bennett's presence sank in. His arrival had shifted the entire atmosphere, turning what had been a tense bidding war into something far more dramatic. People who moments ago had mocked Clara now scrambled to adjust their expressions, trying to mask their earlier behavior. Some sat frozen, unsure whether to applaud or remain silent. Others leaned in eagerly, whispering furiously to their companions about the billionaire's unexpected entrance. Adrian's demeanor was calm but commanding, exuding an aura of quiet authority that demanded respect. He didn't raise his voice or make grand gestures. Instead, he carried himself with the kind of confidence that spoke volumes without saying a word. As he settled into his seat beside Clara, he turned to her with a warm smile. "You were incredible," he said softly, his voice filled with pride. Clara felt a wave of gratitude wash over her, not just for his support, but for the way he always believed in her when others doubted. Meanwhile, Marcus Langley sat rigid in his chair, his face pale and his usual arrogance replaced by unease. He hadn't expected this twist. In fact, he hadn't expected anything about Clara to be real. To him, she had been nothing more than an amusing oddity, a simple woman, out of her depth in a world of wealth and privilege. But now, faced with the reality of who she was and, more importantly, who she was married to, Marcus realized he had made a grave mistake. Before he could recover, Adrian rose from his seat and approached Marcus deliberately. The room fell silent, again all eyes following Adrian's every move. When he reached Marcus's table, Adrian stopped and looked down at him with an expression that was both polite and piercing. Mr. Langley, he began, his tone measured but firm. I couldn't help but overhear some of your comments earlier tonight. Marcus stiffened, his hands gripping the edge of the table. He stammered, struggling to find words. For once, his usual bravado deserted him. Adrian continued, unperturbed. You judged my wife based on appearances, assuming she didn't belong here because of how she looked or dressed. Let me be clear. Clara doesn't need anyone's approval to exist in any space she chooses. And if you think less of her because of superficial reasons, then perhaps it says more about you than it does about her. The weight of Adrian's words hit Marcus like a ton of bricks. Around them, the crowd held its collective breath, watching the confrontation unfold. Some attendees shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others nodded subtly in agreement. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but no sound came out. Instead, he managed a weak apology, mumbling something about not meaning offense. Adrian dismissed him with a curt nod, signaling the conversation was over. As Adrian returned to Clara's side, the tension in the room began to ease. Guests who had previously laughed at Clara's expense now flocked to her, eager to introduce themselves and express admiration for her composure under pressure. A famous actress gushed, "You handled yourself beautifully tonight, Clara. I wish I had your courage." An older gentleman, known for his philanthropy, added, "It takes strength to stand tall when others underestimate you. You've earned my respect." Clara accepted their compliments graciously, though she felt no bitterness toward those who had doubted her earlier. She understood human nature well enough to know that people often acted out of ignorance or insecurity. What mattered most to her was that she had stayed true to herself throughout the ordeal. Still, she couldn't deny the relief she felt as the tide of opinion shifted in her favor. While the crowd celebrated Clara's triumph, Adrian kept a protective, yet unobtrusive presence by her side. He answered questions about his work and shared light-hearted anecdotes, skillfully steering conversations away from anything too personal. Despite his fame, Adrian preferred to let Clara shine, ensuring she remained the center of attention. It was clear to everyone present that theirs was a partnership built on mutual respect and love. Back at their table, Sophia watched the scene unfold with a mixture of pride and amusement. Leaning close to Clara, she whispered, "I told you they'd eat their words eventually." Clara chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Honestly, I wasn't thinking about them at all," she admitted. "I just wanted to prove to myself that I could hold my ground." As the evening wore on, the auctioneer announced the final lot, bringing the event to a close. The organizers thanked everyone for their generosity, emphasizing the impact their contributions would have on the charities supported by the auction. There was a round of applause, followed by a lively after-party where guests mingled freely. By now, Clara was surrounded by admirers, many of whom seemed genuinely interested in getting to know her better. Despite the whirlwind of attention, Clara found herself reflecting on the deeper meaning of the night. She realized that the mockery and judgment she had faced weren't unique to her. They were experiences shared by countless individuals who dared to step outside societal expectations. Yet, she also recognized the power of resilience. Standing up for oneself wasn't just about silencing critics. It was about affirming one's own worth, regardless of external validation. By the time Clara and Adrian left the venue, hand in hand, the story of the evening had already begun to spread. Social media posts and hushed conversations painted Clara as a symbol of quiet strength and dignity. Her name, once unknown to most in the room, was now synonymous with grace under fire. For Clara, however, the true victory lay not in the accolades or the diamond necklace, but in knowing she had faced adversity head-on and emerged stronger for it. In the car ride home, Adrian glanced at Clara and smiled. "You know," he said, "tonight reminded me why I fell in love with you in the first place." Clara raised an eyebrow playfully. "Oh? Was it my ability to win auctions?" Adrian laughed. "No, it was your ability to stay true to yourself, no matter what. That's a rare quality, and it's one of the things I admire most about you." Clara smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. The events of the evening had tested her, but they had also reaffirmed her belief in the importance of authenticity. She knew life would continue to throw challenges her way, but she also knew she had the strength to face them, with or without a billionaire husband by her side. As the after-party buzzed with energy, Clara found herself at the center of attention in a way she had never imagined. People who had earlier dismissed her as an outsider now approached her with wide smiles and eager introductions. Some brought up their own charitable efforts, hoping to connect with her on shared values. Others complimented her poise and courage, praising her for handling the situation with such grace. Clara listened politely, offering soft smiles and kind words in return, though she couldn't help but notice the irony of it all. At one point, a well-dressed man named Richard, who introduced himself as a venture capitalist, leaned in conspiratorially. "Clara," he said, his voice low but earnest, "I must admit I was among those who underestimated you earlier tonight. Please forgive me." He extended his hand, which Clara accepted graciously. "There's nothing to forgive," she replied, simply. Her tone was calm, yet it carried a quiet authority that made Richard pause. For a moment he looked like he wanted to say more, but instead he nodded and stepped back, clearly impressed by her composure. Adrian stood nearby, observing the scene with a mixture of pride and amusement. He noticed how Clara navigated each interaction with authenticity, neither flaunting her newfound status nor shying away from the spotlight. She wasn't trying to win anyone over. She was simply being herself. And that, Adrian thought, was what made her truly remarkable. Despite the warmth surrounding her, Clara couldn't shake off the memory of Marcus Langley's smug smirk or the whispers that had echoed through the room earlier. Though Adrian had already confronted him publicly, Clara knew there was still unfinished business. She didn't hold personal grudges, she rarely did, but she understood the importance of addressing situations where someone's behavior crossed a line. Ignoring such moments only allowed them to fester, sending the wrong message about what was acceptable. Adrian sensed her thoughts and gently squeezed her hand. "Do you want to talk to him?" he asked quietly. Clara hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Yes," she said firmly. "But not because I'm angry. I just think it's important to set things straight." With Adrian by her side, Clara walked toward Marcus, who was standing near the bar nursing a drink. His posture was stiff, and his usual air of confidence seemed to have evaporated entirely. When he noticed Clara approaching, his face flushed slightly and he set his glass down awkwardly. "Clara, Mr. Bennett," he stammered, clearly unsure of what to say. Clara met his gaze steadily, her expression neutral but not unkind. "Marcus," she began, her voice steady and clear, "earlier tonight you made some comments about me that were hurtful, not just to me, but to anyone who might have heard them." She paused, letting her words sink in. Marcus opened his mouth to interrupt, but Clara continued. "I'm not here to argue or make accusations. I just want to remind you that we're all human beings, and treating others with respect shouldn't depend on what they wear or how much money they have." For a long moment, Marcus stared at her, his jaw working silently as if searching for the right response. Finally, he exhaled deeply and nodded. "You're absolutely right," he admitted, his voice tinged with genuine regret. "I acted poorly and I owe you an apology. I let my ego get the better of me, and that's no excuse. I hope you can forgive me." Clara studied him for a beat longer, then offered a small smile. "Thank you for saying that," she said softly. "Apologies are meaningful when they're sincere." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Marcus standing there, visibly shaken but perhaps wiser for the experience. The encounter left a ripple effect throughout the room. Word spread quickly about Clara's measured response to Marcus's apology, earning her even more admiration. One woman, a prominent journalist, pulled Clara aside to ask if she would consider sharing her story in an upcoming article about overcoming adversity. Clara politely declined, explaining that she preferred to keep her life private. "This isn't about me," she said kindly. "It's about remembering to treat everyone with kindness and respect no matter the circumstances." As the night wore on, Clara and Adrian decided to take a break from the crowd and step outside onto the balcony overlooking the city. The cool evening breeze provided a welcome contrast to the heated atmosphere inside. Clara leaned against the railing, gazing out at the glittering skyline while Adrian stood beside her, his presence comforting and reassuring. "You know," Adrian said after a while, breaking the comfortable silence between them, "you inspired a lot of people tonight, not just with your actions but with your attitude. You showed them that true strength comes from within." Clara glanced at him, her lips curving into a soft smile. "I wasn't trying to inspire anyone," she admitted. "I just wanted to stay true to myself. That's something you've always taught me, to value who I am regardless of what others think." Adrian chuckled softly. "Well, whether you intended it or not, you've made quite an impression. People won't forget this night anytime soon." He paused, then added thoughtfully, "And neither will I." They stood there together, for a while longer, enjoying the peaceful moment amidst the chaos of the evening. Clara felt a deep sense of gratitude, not for the luxury or the accolades, but for the simple fact that she had faced a challenge and emerged stronger for it. More importantly, she realized that her worth wasn't tied to external validation or material possessions. It came from knowing who she was and staying grounded in her values. When they finally returned home later that night, Clara removed her modest floral dress and slipped into something more comfortable. As she sat on the edge of the bed brushing her hair, Adrian joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "So," he teased lightly, "do you think you'll attend another auction anytime soon?" Clara laughed softly, shaking her head. "Probably not," she said with a grin. "But hey, if I do, at least I know I can handle whatever comes my way." Her words hung in the air, filled with quiet confidence. The events of the evening had tested her resilience, but they had also reinforced her belief in the power of authenticity. Clara knew life would continue to present challenges, but she also knew she had everything she needed to face them, with grace, dignity, and unwavering self-belief. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows of Clara and Adrian's home, casting a warm glow over the quiet living room. Clara sat on the couch with a cup of tea in her hands, staring out at the garden where birds chirped cheerfully. The events of the previous night felt like a distant dream now, yet their impact lingered. She replayed moments in her mind, the mocking whispers, the tense bidding war, Adrian's dramatic entrance, and the final confrontation with Marcus. Each memory brought a mix of emotions: pride, relief, and even a touch of amusement. Adrian entered the room carrying 2 plates of breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and fresh fruit. He placed one plate on the coffee table in front of Clara and sat down beside her. "Morning," he said with a smile, his tone light but affectionate. "How are you feeling today?" Clara took a sip of her tea before answering. "Honestly, a little overwhelmed, but in a good way." She chuckled softly. "I never expected last night to turn into, well, whatever it turned into." Adrian nodded, leaning back against the couch. "It was quite the evening," he agreed. "But I have to say I'm proud of how you handled everything. Most people would have crumbled under that kind of pressure, but not you. You stood your ground and proved a lot of people wrong." Clara tilted her head thoughtfully. "Do you think they really learned anything, though?" she asked. "Or will they just forget about it once the excitement wears off?" Adrian considered her question for a moment. "Some might forget," he admitted, "but others won't. There's always someone who takes these kinds of moments to heart, the ones who realize they misjudged you or understand why treating people fairly matters. And honestly, that's enough." Clara smiled faintly, appreciating his perspective. Still, she couldn't help but wonder if the lessons of the night would extend beyond the glittering ballroom. After all, society often moved quickly from one spectacle to the next, rarely pausing to reflect on deeper truths. But perhaps that was why staying true to oneself was so important. It created ripples that could inspire change, even if only in small ways. Later that day, as Clara scrolled through her phone, she noticed several notifications from social media platforms. Friends and acquaintances had posted about the auction, many mentioning her by name. Some shared photos of the event, including candid shots of her during the bidding war. One post caught her eye, a quote attributed to her, though she didn't. "Remember saying it aloud. True strength isn't about proving yourself to others, it's about believing in yourself no matter what." Curious, Clara clicked on the comment section and found hundreds of replies praising her words. People from all walks of life, students, professionals, parents, had chimed in, sharing stories of times they'd faced judgment or adversity. Many thanked her for inspiring them to stay strong in difficult situations. Clara felt a lump rise in her throat as she read through the heartfelt messages. She hadn't set out to be an inspiration, but somehow her actions had resonated with strangers across the globe. When Adrian joined her later, she showed him the posts. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the screen. "I had no idea something like this could happen." Adrian skimmed through the comments, his expression thoughtful. "People connect with authenticity," he explained. "They see someone standing up for themselves, refusing to back down despite the odds, and it reminds them of their own struggles. You gave them hope, Clara." She shook her head, still processing the magnitude of it all. "It's strange, isn't it? Last night I was just trying to hold my ground. Now it feels like everyone's watching me." Adrian reached over and took her hand. "That's the thing about courage, it has a way of shining brightly whether we intend it to or not. But don't let it overwhelm you. You're still the same person you were yesterday, and that's exactly who everyone admires." As the days passed, Clara began receiving invitations to exclusive events and galas. Wealthy socialites and influential figures wanted to meet her, eager to include her in their circles. At first, Clara hesitated, unsure if she belonged in such settings. But Adrian encouraged her to embrace the opportunity, not because she needed validation, but because it allowed her to spread kindness and positivity wherever she went. One afternoon, Clara attended a luncheon hosted by a local charity organization. As she mingled with guests, she struck up a conversation with a young woman named Mia, who worked tirelessly to support underprivileged children. Mia confessed that she often doubted her abilities, fearing she wasn't good enough to make a difference. Clara listened intently, nodding as Mia spoke. "You know," Clara said gently, "I used to feel the same way. There were times when I let other people's opinions get to me, when I wondered if I truly belonged somewhere. But then I realized something. None of us are perfect, and that's okay. What matters is that we keep showing up, doing our best, and staying true to ourselves. If you believe in what you're doing, that's all the permission you need." Mia's eyes lit up and she smiled gratefully. "Thank you," she said. "I needed to hear that." Moments like these reminded Clara of the ripple effect Adrian had mentioned. By simply being herself and sharing her experiences, she was able to uplift others. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about connection, empathy, and understanding. Mian. At home, Adrian watched Clara grow more confident with each passing day. He admired the way she carried herself, not with arrogance, but with quiet self-assurance. She wasn't seeking approval anymore. She was content knowing she had earned respect through her actions. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Clara turned to Adrian. "Do you ever worry that things will go back to how they were before?" she asked. "That people will stop seeing me as, well, as someone worth respecting?" Adrian smiled and shook his head. "No, I don't worry about that. Because here's the thing, Clara. Respect isn't something you lose overnight. Once people see your character, your integrity, and your strength, it stays with them. Sure, there will always be skeptics, but that's not your concern. Your job is to keep being you, and trust me, that's more than enough." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling a deep sense of peace. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had taught her invaluable lessons about resilience, authenticity, and the power of staying grounded. Whether in a crowded ballroom or a quiet corner of her home, she knew she had everything she needed to face whatever came next. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Clara realized something profound. Sometimes, the greatest victories aren't the ones we plan. They're the ones that remind us of who we are and what truly matters. A few weeks after the auction, life began to settle into a rhythm for Clara and Adrian. The whirlwind of attention had slowed, replaced by a quieter, more reflective period. Yet the impact of that unforgettable night continued to resonate in subtle yet meaningful ways. For Clara, it wasn't about the accolades or the newfound invitations. It was about the lessons she carried forward and how they shaped her perspective on life. One crisp morning, as autumn leaves swirled outside their kitchen window, Clara sat at the table with a notebook open in front of her. She scribbled thoughts, jotting down ideas for a community initiative she'd been considering. Inspired by the charity auction and her conversations with people like Mia, Clara wanted to create something tangible, a program that would empower individuals who often felt overlooked or dismissed. Her vision was simple: provide resources, mentorship, and encouragement to those striving to make a difference regardless of their background or circumstances. Adrian walked in, coffee mug in hand, and glanced over her shoulder. "What's this?" he asked curiously, gesturing to the pages filled with notes and sketches. Clara looked up, a spark of excitement in her eyes. "I've been thinking about starting a foundation," she explained. "Something focused on helping everyday heroes, people working behind the scenes to improve their communities. They deserve recognition and support, don't you think?" Adrian grinned, clearly impressed. "That sounds incredible," he said. "You've always had a talent for seeing potential in others. If anyone can bring this idea to life, it's you." Encouraged by his enthusiasm, Clara dove deeper into planning. Over the following weeks, she reached out to friends, colleagues, and local leaders, gathering input and building a network of supporters. The process wasn't without challenges. There were logistical hurdles and moments of self-doubt, but Clara tackled each obstacle with determination. Every step reminded her of the resilience she'd discovered during the auction, reinforcing her belief that perseverance could turn even the smallest idea into something meaningful. Meanwhile, stories from that fateful evening continued to circulate. A journalist published an article highlighting Clara's grace under pressure, framing her experience as a lesson in humility and strength. Though Clara initially felt uneasy about the spotlight, she came to appreciate the opportunity it gave her to amplify her message. In interviews and casual conversations, she emphasized the importance of treating others with kindness and respect, urging people to look beyond appearances and assumptions. One day, while attending a fundraising gala for her budding foundation, Clara crossed paths with Marcus Langley again. He approached her hesitantly, holding a glass of wine in one hand. "Clara," he began, his tone tentative but sincere, "I just wanted to thank you for everything." She raised an eyebrow, surprised by his words. "Thank me? For what?" Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. "That night, it changed something for me. I realized how much damage arrogance and judgment can do, not just to others but to ourselves. Seeing the way you handled things made me reevaluate my own behavior. I've been working on being more mindful, more compassionate. It's not easy, but..." He trailed off, offering a small smile. "Anyway, I owe you for opening my eyes." Clara studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I'm glad to hear that," she said softly. "Change starts with awareness, and it takes courage to admit when we're wrong. Keep going. You'll be amazed at what you can achieve." As Marcus walked away, Clara felt a sense of closure. Their encounter wasn't about vindication or triumph, it was about growth, for both of them. It reinforced her belief that every interaction, no matter how challenging, held the potential for transformation. Back home, Clara and Adrian spent evenings discussing the progress of the foundation. They brainstormed names, designed logos, and mapped out strategies for outreach. Adrian offered his expertise and connections, ensuring the project had the resources it needed to thrive. But he also knew when to step back, allowing Clara to take the lead. "This is your dream," he told her one night as they reviewed plans together. "I'm just here to support you." Clara smiled, touched by his unwavering encouragement. "You've always believed in me, even when I doubted myself," she said. "That means more than you know." When the foundation officially launched, a few months later, it quickly gained traction. Local news outlets covered the event, praising its mission and the woman behind it. Volunteers poured in, eager to contribute their time and skills. Recipients of the program's support shared heartfelt testimonials, crediting Clara and her team for giving them the confidence to pursue their goals. At the launch ceremony, standing before a crowd of supporters, Clara delivered a speech that echoed the values she'd embraced throughout her journey. "We live in a world that often judges us based on superficial standards, what we wear, where we come from, or how much money we have," she said, her voice steady and warm. "But true worth isn't defined by any of those things. It's defined by our actions, our compassion, and our willingness to lift others up. That's what this foundation is about, reminding everyone that they matter, no matter who they are or where they start." The audience erupted in applause, moved by her sincerity. As Clara stepped down from the podium, Adrian greeted her with a hug. "You did it," he whispered proudly, "and you did it your way." In the months that followed, Clara found joy in watching the foundation grow. From mentoring young entrepreneurs to funding educational programs, the organization became a beacon of hope for countless individuals. Yet despite her success, Clara remained grounded, never losing sight of the principles that guided her. She continued to prioritize authenticity, empathy, and humility, knowing these qualities were the foundation of lasting impact. One evening, as winter settled in and snow blanketed the ground, Clara and Adrian sat by the fireplace, reflecting on the year that had passed. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if we hadn't gone to that auction?" Adrian mused aloud. Clara chuckled softly, sipping her hot cocoa. "Honestly, I try not to think too much about what ifs. What matters is what we've done since then and where we're headed next." Adrian nodded, reaching over to hold her hand. "You're right. And wherever we go, I know you'll keep inspiring people along the way." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. Life had thrown challenges her way, but each one had taught her something valuable. She had learned to stand firm in the face of judgment, to embrace her unique strengths, and to use her experiences to uplift others. Most importantly, she had discovered that true fulfillment came not from external validation but from staying true to oneself. As the fire crackled softly and the room grew quiet, Clara closed her eyes, letting the warmth envelop her. She didn't need glittering chandeliers or diamond necklaces to feel rich. Her wealth lay in the love she shared, the lives she touched, and the knowledge that she had faced adversity and emerged stronger for it.